Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be covering how I think Gary Vaynerchuk, the entrepreneur, is going to make his billions and ultimately buy the jets. Now, if you're not familiar with the Gary Vaynerchuk story, it's a little complicated, but long story short, he's a super famous guy on social media, on all social media, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, who has helped a lot of people start their business, find their passion, uh, find more happiness, but also along the way he started a lot of businesses that have succeeded, from VaynerX to Empathy Wines. He sold a lot of them, and he's also got in as an angel investor to a lot of tech stocks early on, like Twitter and Facebook, as well as being very big in the social media marketing world and a lot of uh, grassroots flipping world. So you get the point. That's his intro. Now, I am going to be taking my knowledge of studying billionaires. I think there's about 218 books written by billionaires, and I've read about 30 of them so far, and some of them are really long. So it may not seem like a lot, but 30, I mean, you do not come out the same person, even after reading one or two. I mean, 30, you get a real sense of what billionaires are. And I actually have the longest list for books written by billionaires on the web. So if you just search that on Google, you'll find my blog and that article if you want to read all the books as well. But I've gone through a lot of them. I've also watched a lot of commencement speeches, interviews, documentaries, books about billionaires, not just ones written by them. And so I have a lot of cross-reference knowledge, more than I would say 99% of the world. And so I want to use this knowledge to kind of get a sense for how I think Gary Vaynerchuk will and should, those are two different things, will and should make his first $1 billion and then the following $1 billion. As T. Boone Pickens says, the first billion is always the hardest. So let's get to it. Now, I believe that you have to play to your passion, your strengths, and your way of doing things. And I say that because there are many ways that billionaires have made their wealth. It's not just one way. There's different formats, or I guess you call them business models, or that they do it through. The most common is, here's my baby. I'm going to raise that baby through good times and bad for the next 30, 40 years. And until all of a sudden, it's a Nike, or it's a Walmart, or it's a McDonald's. So that's the way that's most commonly seen, but it is not the only way of doing it. It's common, but it's by far not the only way. And so, sometimes it takes 30, 40 years. Oftentimes it's a lot longer than you think. But on rare occasion, like with a Facebook, it happens much quicker. Now that being said, I don't think Gary will fall neatly into this category. Based on his personality and his past business experience, buying and reselling or starting and then selling at least 4 or 5 different companies, from Empathy Wines and so forth, I don't think that's his goal. And you might be wondering, like, why do you think he's going to be a billionaire or wants to be a billionaire? Because he says it all the time. And he wants to buy the New York Jets, and he's working really hard to do that. So that's just for some clarification for those out of the loop. But I think, based off his personality, he's more of a kind of Sumner Redstone Viacom guy, in the sense that he either starts things from scratch or he buys them, and then he sells them for a lot more later on. So he's a buyer and seller, or create and seller, whether that thing is a entire business or something he bought at a garage sale. That's kind of what he does, but he's not just, sitting on it and then flipping it. A lot of these things, he's building from scratch, with like VaynerX and his media company, VaynerMedia. He has a lot of value into it. He creates a structure, and he's good at it. Would I say greatest of all time? Not exactly. His Glassdoor reviews for a lot of his companies could be better. So there's definitely some culture and employee work that can be done, but nonetheless, he's really good at it. He's made millions off of that, and then he does a lot of these different things. So I say Sumner Redstone because in his book, I think it's called A Passion to Win. Um, in his book, I discovered that Sumner is a guy who just kind of, he has a kind of, first off, he was this like ruthless a lawyer. And, just keep in mind, like, as far as him as a person and him as a billionaire, I don't think him as a person is that successful. This is a guy who just doesn't care to make any friends. And so, there's billionaires I admire as people, as well as business people. But Sumner, just as a business person. Anyhow, for Sumner, he was a guy who really just went crazy with acquiring businesses. Sometimes with debt, sometimes just building monopolies. And he had an eye for just purchasing the right businesses, and then going through these very harsh, high pressure negotiations to kind of figure out the right, cost per share to buy the business at. And that is what ultimately led him to his success. Starting slow with like movie theaters and stuff, and then slowly, eventually getting to a point where he bought this entire media company that houses some of the most iconic TV channels and media branches of all time. I think he bought Nickelodeon, MTV, and I think THC is also there. But you could really see how he's basically this intergenerational kind of eye for talent in the media acquisition world. And so it was amazing, even though he was this old guy, retired lawyer, ruthless guy, he was able to see the power of the youth and energy of MTV and how music videos were going to take over. And he just loved the fact that when he went into the office and toured MTV, it was like a college dorm. And for him to see that, it's admirable. So I see that in Gary to a certain extent, not the ruthless part or the negotiation part, but seeing that eye for what's going to be big next, and then purchasing the right things, and then turning that into something else where he resells later, or just keeps for a very, very long time, forever basically, unless he has to liquidate it. So that's I think the way. Now, I don't think there's other ways that billionaires make their money, and I don't think that he's per se a value investor. I think another way that billionaires make money, or some billionaires made their wealth, is through kind of value investing. And that's different from Sumner Redstone, which I would categorize as acquisition and negotiation. They're different because if you look at Warren Buffett as an investor, this guy who really bought a bunch of companies and in a similar way is an investor to Sumner. That's a way of different way of making money, because with Warren's case, I think he has a much more qualitative, fundamental approach, and he doesn't ever sell if he can help it. He plans to buy them for life if he can. Now, on occasion, if it passes his intrinsic value, he will sell. But oftentimes, for him, it's a much more qualitative approach. He thinks if you really hit a home run, you never want to sell that thing. That's just going to keep cranking out money until eternity. Even if you calculate all the money it will make until the end of time and discount that back to today, for some of his purchases, he really just holds them forever. And it's more so of a kind of holistic strategy of really buying these lovable businesses that are just have these big floats. I don't see that exactly in Gary, because he's much more of a creator in the initial sense of starting that company or helping with it. And he's also one who is happy to get rid of that company when the time is right. When he thinks it's time to resell or sell it back or have someone else acquire it, he will do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just a different approach to investing. I personally prefer, I more gravitate to Warren's standpoint, because why wouldn't you want to hold something as incredible and iconic as a Coca-Cola or Oreos or Frito-Lay until the end of time? I mean, that's just something that would just continuously build upon its brand, be recognized forever, and just generate enormous profits, sometimes beyond what you expect the intrinsic value to be. But that's just my personality. So I think just to map out a couple more of the ways billionaires make money, and just to tie it back together, another way, and this is obviously out of the picture for Gary, but it's just excelling at a sport or a specific media personality thing. So I'm specifically looking at people like Michael Jordan or Oprah Winfrey, or these type of people who are kind of media stars in some way, shape, or form, and through that, just based off the sheer personal brand, have been able to leverage that into a product. In Jordan's case, it was Air Jordans, the shoe. In Oprah's case, it was not a product in a sense of a physical thing, but a attention. The ownership and brand equity in her companies, her media networks, and the advertisements that they were able to sell. That's how they made their money. Now that's something that's once in a millennium type thing, and you really have to be super good at a sport. And even if you are, like, none of them really make it. Like the sponsorship money even like a Tiger Woods makes, it's in the hundreds of millions, but it's hard pressed to make billions off of that. So it's like very hard to do, and so I don't think that's in the cards for Gary or his main way of doing it. So that's another type, and then I guess the final type of billionaire I want to talk about, or way of making money as a billionaire, is there's it's kind of like some will trade up or kind of trade through different companies. Um, and so they may start in one industry or one company, or they'll stay in that one general industry, but they're essentially kind of uh, moving around a bit. Sometimes it's through uh, just being in the right company at the right time. So Eric Schmidt is a good example. He built his chops and skills as a CEO. He just so happened to be a right fit for Google uh, when it was starting out and they needed someone, and that's how he did it. So there's luck involved. Or you're someone who's actually at the helm of things, but rather than staying at one company all the time, you kind of shift and move to different companies throughout the years, and just by building up stock options and ownership in that company through an equity standpoint, which is usually the key, not so much a payroll standpoint. You make more money owning the company than being part of the payroll, even if you're making millions as the CEO. And just being in a series of the right companies, you can kind of build a Rolodex, which not only pads your resume, but kind of gets you to build that wealth. And that's also very rare, and I don't necessarily see Gary as that type per se. If you look at his past track record, almost all of his wealth has come from him creating it through his own companies, his own equity, his own investments in other companies. So I don't necessarily see him as a kind of, I'm the CEO and all I have to focus on are honing my skills and choosing the right job offer or next company to join, or the next thing. He has a little tinge of that, but it's more so him putting in his own kind of grit and energy and creating value in his ideas and his companies and the companies he invests in, rather than just being a really good CEO like Eric Schmidt or maybe some of these these other people, and kind of like trading up in a way over time. So essentially, I think that's how Gary will do it or has to do it. I could be wrong, but I think that's his highest chances. Now, how is he going to do that? One may never know. Maybe it's a Puma, maybe it's Oreos. I doubt it. I think um, he has this idea. He says this a lot of how he will kind of take an old brand and then rejuvenate it, and that's how he plans on doing it. That's one way, for sure. But there's other ways of kind of rejuvenating a brand. I think that's a great way, in fact. But um, it's probably not going to be a brand that you're expecting, and it's probably not going to be exactly like okay, Puma, you're the new Nike now. It's not that easy at all, and it's probably going to be messy, and it's probably not just going to be a new brand perception thing. Like when you study the companies like Nike or Walmart who just took over, um, it really had to do with a excellent product. And when you look at companies that have just come back or have stood the test of time, like Adidas, uh, has a lot to do with, a lot of things, but uh, really, really being on the cutting edge with your product and keeping up with the times, and uh, price, economics, marketing, influencers, all these things together. So I'm excited to see where it goes, and it's just the beginning. Maybe 10, 20 years from now, we're going to see some cool things and see what happens. So I'm excited to see his journey, and we'll see where it goes.